The Baltimore Ravens made a surprise move and brought back Yannick Ngakoue to bolster their pass rush. We talk about that, some thoughts on the Ravens and Cowboys day after, and so much more coming up next on this instant reaction edition of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravenswire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day, your first listen of the day, or here in the evening, right about 6:30 p.m. Eastern time on an instant reaction edition. Free and available for you. All podcasting platforms, that includes video form on YouTube and audio form wherever you get your podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Wasn't really anticipating doing this. Hey, we got two live shows in less than 24 hours here as the Ravens beat the Dallas Cowboys in week 3. And then they make a little bit of a surprise move. According to Adam Schefter, they are bringing back pass rusher, edge rusher, Yannick Ngakoue. According to Jess Rebeck, it's going to be onto the practice squad with the idea of him ramping up and obviously having, hopefully, a big impact for the Ravens in 2024. So, man, it's not something that was on my bingo card personally. I thought that Baltimore's pass rush has been pretty solid, but they have certainly lost some steam and some gas over the last couple of weeks, particularly later in the game. So we will talk about that, dive into Ngakoue himself, what kind of happened the first time around with him, and just what he can bring to the table. Then we'll get into some Ravens and Cowboys day after stuff. And oh, would you look at that? I spelled Cowboys wrong on the graphic. Look at this. Again, you go a million miles a minute with this stuff, and sometimes it slips through the cracks, but you know what? Let's do a little fix up, and look at that. Cowboys is spelled correctly. Ravens obviously beat the Cowboys in week 3. We'll talk about just some of the thoughts after that game. And then latest news, John Harbaugh talked to the media on Monday today, had some interesting things to say. We'll dive into all that as well. So let's talk about Yannick Ngakoue. Let's cut to the chase. A move that definitely was surprising to me. Not only just for the fact that I wasn't expecting the Ravens to bring in another pass rusher. Again, with Kyle Van Noy balling out to start the season. You have Odafe Oweh, who's doing his thing. David Ojabo has had moments as well. Haven't really seen a ton from Tavius Robinson this year, but even still, the Ravens definitely felt like they needed some pass rushing juice, and I only actually had the time to bring up the mobile graphic, so I'm about to be displaced on the screen for a second as I bring it up. Oh, there. All right, let's lean into it. There it is. All right, Yannick Ngakoue. He is, how do I get there he is. Ngakoue, they're bringing him back. Bringing back Yannick Ngakoue again. Adam Schefter, practice squad for him. First stint in Baltimore didn't go very well. Wasn't a very good first stint in Baltimore. Again, if you remember, the Ravens ended up trading for him from the Minnesota Vikings after he only spent, half the year there in Minnesota after getting traded there. It was a 3rd and a 5th round pick, if I'm not mistaken, in that deal. Played in 9 games for the Ravens, had just 3 sacks. And he left, went to Las Vegas. He was actually a part of that opening week loss in the Ravens had in 2021, the first game at Allegiant Stadium. But this one is, the rumblings that he didn't really like it in Baltimore, and Spencer Schultz kind of alluded to this as well, where, didn't really enjoy his time, wasn't really a fit for the defense. Now, obviously, it's a bit different, and I agree. His usage in Don Martindale's defense was very suspect. It was. I mean, we can call it like it is. They were having him do things that he shouldn't have been doing, dropping back into coverage and kind of his role on that group. Don Martindale's unit was everybody plays everywhere. Everybody does everything. And the Mike McDonald, Zach Orr philosophy has not been that, where there are always different. There are some of the same concepts in these defenses, but it's not always the same thing. So I expect this to be, look, if Ngakoue can show up, get ready, learn the defense, get acclimated again, I expect it to go better than his first time. I don't necessarily expect it to be this, okay, Ngakoue is coming in and saving the season for the Ravens if it comes down to it. But his pass rushing depth, I think you'll take it, especially as a guy, again, now your updated edge rusher room for the Ravens is Kyle Van Noy, Odafe Owe, David Ajabo, Tavius Robinson, Yannick Ngakoue, and Elisa Isaac once everybody is on the active roster. And who knows what the corresponding move would be. Obviously, the Ravens don't have to make one until they put him on the active roster. But is that Elisa Isaac gets put on IR? Do they, cut and then demote someone to the practice squad, essentially? I don't know what that would look like, but I don't think this is a move for them to just kind of have him stay on the practice squad and just have him be depth. I think he was looking for the right opportunity. He was one of the better players still available in free agency. But again, it's a move that doesn't necessarily move me all that much. I mean, you look at Yannick Ngakoue's career stats, 69 career sacks, was really good for both the Raiders and the Colts in 2021 and 2022 after leaving the Ravens. Had 10 sacks for the Raiders in 2021 and then followed it up with almost another 10-sack season, 9.5 for the Colts in 2022. Now, he was dealing with injuries in 2023, only 4 sacks for the Bears. Last season, had an injury, I think, towards the end of the year, so only played in 13 games, which is still a decent amount of games. Like, again, wasn't a good year for him. It was actually statistically his worst season total. His worst stint was Baltimore, but his worst season total was last year with Chicago. So I expect the Ravens to try to use him in a role because we know, look, Ngakoue is not a good run defender. Ngakoue is not someone you want as a run defender. He's someone that you would rather put out there in pure pass rushing situations. He can just focus on doing that and use his skill set that way. This is not a player you want to have out as a 3-down player, right? He's not. So to me, I think if you can get him in on 3rd-down situations, he can give you a little bit of a boost there. I'm okay with that, but that's how the Ravens have to utilize him. They can't put him out there in a role that he is not familiar with, in a role that does not fit his skill set. That's what the Ravens did in 2020 when they traded for him, and obviously it wasn't good. There were a couple of near misses he had. I don't think the 3 sacks in 9 games tell the whole story, but it wasn't great for him. So I can't remember if Ngakoue said anything or not about his stint in Baltimore, if he said something about it not being good, or I don't remember exactly. I'm gonna have to go and do some more research on that. Maybe have that for tomorrow's show, which is actually being recorded soon with Kadri Ismail. So be sure to check that out. But it's kind of just like a situation where you look at the pass rush for the Ravens, and it wasn't necessarily the position I thought they'd want to add at. Now, I know a lot of people are clamoring for offensive line help. Why didn't they bring an offensive line over Yannick Ngakoue? Well, I've said it, I'll say it again. Everybody needs offensive linemen. There aren't really a ton of great offensive line options out there right now. And, even though the Ravens didn't throw the ball a ton in week 3, I don't think that was going to be the week. Like, this was going to be the week they were going to go and make a change on the offensive line in terms of bringing in somebody. Dallas's defensive front outside of Marcus Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence, I guess, too, is pretty bad. Their run defense is atrocious. I liked what I saw from that offensive line, but we're going to have to see them stack that. If they can't, then maybe they do make an outside addition, even if it's not a needle mover type deal. I don't think Ngakoue is a needle mover, but even if it's just to get some guys some rest, I'm okay with it. So I don't expect him to play for the first couple of weeks. I'm sure what they'll try to do is maybe elevate him from the practice squad to try to save the roster spot for a couple of weeks since he's on there. Again, you can be elevated from the practice squad multiple times before you have to be moved up to the active roster. So I would probably expect them to call up Ngakoue before promoting him to the active roster, but I'm sure there is some level of an agreement between the two sides of after a certain number of weeks or whatnot, he is going to be up there. So to me, is your 4th edge rusher. It's not like they're bringing him in to be the top pass rusher on the team. Kyle Van Noy's looked awesome. And Owe has looked to take that jump. He has over the first couple of weeks. But the consistency of the pass rush, and John Harbaugh kind of alluded to it today, it's been great, and the effort has been there for 3 quarters. But then we saw against that Dallas team, Dak was having a bunch of time to throw later in the game, where early he was having all sorts of fits against that Ravens pass rush. But at this time, you need as many healthy players as you can have. Ngakoue comes in fresh, and that is what it is. And Harbaugh, again, said the pass rush and secondary have not been aligned in the 4th quarter. Coverages have been too loose, and it may be in the team's head a little bit as well. I think look, we can talk about the 4th quarters. We'll certainly get to it in the second part of the show. But as far as like physical stuff with this team, a lot of it is mental, in my opinion. Like they are in their heads. I think Justin Tucker, Harbaugh said, is like a technique thing, but I'm sure some of it's in his head. They have to just get out of that. It's early season stuff. So Ngakoue, it's not like they're signing in practice squad players. It's not a deal where they're breaking the bank for a player that could potentially make an impact for them this season, even though it's not going to be this major splash move, and it's not one at this point. If Ngakoue can be some level between his 2022 and 2023 version, if you can give the Ravens 5 sacks this year, that's a huge win, a massive win for this team. But we'll have to see what the plan is, how they plan to bring him along, and what ultimately they decide to do with him moving forward. Still got a lot to talk about here on Locked On Ravens. We'll continue to dive into the Ngakoue signing a little bit, but also talk about some points from the Ravens and Cowboys game the day after. We have some perspective, obviously, as it usually goes. So be sure to stay tuned. We have a lot to dive into on this instant reaction live edition of Locked On Ravens. But first, this show is brought to you by LinkedIn. And when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to find right professionals for your team faster and for free. So for me, I've had a ton of great experiences over on LinkedIn, finding jobs, networking, connecting. LinkedIn has it all. And LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else. Even those who aren't actively searching for a new job might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 7% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We are back. Our second segment, Locked On Ravens Live. Kevin Oestreicher is talking with you right about 6:45 p.m. The Ravens signing Yannick Ngakoue to their practice squad. A bit of a surprising move, but appreciate everybody for being here on this live edition of Locked On Ravens. We have a ton of Ravens content out right now and a ton of Ravens content coming your way. Had a great episode this morning talking about Lamar Jackson sending a pretty clear message to John Harbaugh and the Ravens coaching staff, as well as calling out Marlon Humphrey. So be sure to check that out if you haven't already from earlier today. We had our post-game episode on the Ravens and Dallas game in week 3. So that was an instant reaction type of deal. If you want to check that out as well, you absolutely can. I see Tremor. What's up, man? I'm doing well. It's busy right now, but we're trucking through. So appreciate you tuning in. Felix, what's up, man? Appreciate you tuning in. Ryan saying early free agency for the Ravens, right? It's never early March. It's week 2 of free agency to the trade deadline. That's what it is. Week 2 of the season of the trade deadline. And I'm sure that Derrick is going to be looking at other options. So while the Ravens can evaluate their pass rush right now, they can bring in somebody who they feel like can maybe help. At the end of the day, DeCosta, we know, is being very aggressive at the trade deadline. And that, to me, screams that maybe they could make a move this year. And also, Ryan just giving some unsung heroes off the bat. Darius Washington, Andrew Voorhees, Trenton Simpson, Travis Jones, Jordan Stout, all those guys in that Dallas Week 3 win. So, to Ryan's point here, the Ravens do beat the Dallas Cowboys in Week 3. 28-25 was certainly a game that started off great. 3 quarters was awesome and domination. That 4th quarter, though, ended up plaguing them, and they got outscored 19-0 in that 4th quarter. But look, got to give credit where it's due and then criticism where it's due. The Ravens did their thing in those first 3 quarters, and they did enough late, barely, to come out with the win. And they are 1-0 instead of 0-1, and that's what matters on the record. But they certainly do have things to clean up. I love the way Darius Washington played. He got in CeeDee Lamb's head a little bit. CeeDee had a rough game out there. Travis Jones just manhandling people. Jordan Stout, after a rough game in Week 2, he's one of the main reasons they won, pinning the Dallas Cowboys back inside the 10, inside the 20, over and over again. Shout out to Jordan Stout. 100% agree with you there, Ryan. Voorhees, 0 pressure, 0 sacks. Really good game from him. And Trent Simpson just doing his thing. So really, the view for me the day after is, for everybody, I'm sure, it was frustrating to see the Ravens almost blow the game the way they did. They had another near collapse. It seemed like they got too conservative both on the offensive and defensive sides of the ball. And I think it's right to have concerns about that, right? To have questions about that. I certainly do. But I think that they showed some stuff in this game that they can at least take away and move forward with, in terms of being able to run the football effectively, feed Derrick Henry, They were better with the option plays in boots and play actions. I thought they did a better job at that. Getting to the second level, they did a better job at in this game, making sure to seal off edges. I mean, the misdirections, all of that stuff worked well for them. But then they just got too conservative late, and it allowed Dallas to get back in the game. And that was both offensively and defensively. I think they got too conservative. Zach Orr started to play too high and just a bunch of all these conservative looks. And Dak Prescott ate it up. And then Justin Tucker misses the field goal. Dallas goes down the field quickly and scores. They get the onside kick. Dallas goes quickly down the field and scores. All the momentum's back on Dallas' side. Baltimore goes 3 and out. The Cowboys get the ball back. They go down the field and score. I mean, I think that if Zay and Lamar didn't make that incredible play together and convert that third down, Brandon Aubrey at least ties the game, if not, Dallas winning it. So clutch plays by Lamar down the stretch and Zay being involved. But it's stuff that I want to see them carry over, especially in the run game and on the offensive line. We need to give credit to the offensive line. That we talked a lot about how they performed last week and over the first couple weeks of the season. We wanted to see them be better. Derrick Henry said that he challenged them to be a better group and, that he had the confidence in them. And man, it was honestly really cool to see Derrick Henry praise them after the game, name everybody by name on the offensive line. Apparently he jumped into Daniel Falele's arms after his press conference. Like, that's leadership right there. Both he and Lamar Jackson, leadership on that offensive line and not giving up on your guys. I commend all of them for doing that. And that's good leadership, good teamwork, and good camaraderie in that Ravens locker room. So for Falele, for McCary, Voorhees, all those guys, was it a perfect day for the offensive line? Obviously not. But it was night and day at least from what we saw in weeks 1 and 2. Can't have the weeks 1 and 2. But if you can live with some of the week 3s, I will 100%. Now, Dallas's run defense is atrocious. It's the worst in the league by a wide margin. Their looks were awful. I thought Mike Zimmer called a terrible game. But you know what? When that happens and other teams make mistakes like that, you take advantage. That's what good teams do. Is if you're a good team, you take advantage of those mistakes. And the Ravens did. Dallas was putting up light boxes. They were putting 4 defensive linemen in there. It was, some of those looks were just baffling. You know what Baltimore did? They were able to double team off the snap, get to the second level, block those linebackers, and it was a party for Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. So I'm glad that they were able to do that. Again, just domination on the ground. The Ravens in the passing game, again, they didn't have to throw the ball as much in this game. Lamar only 15 total attempts, but a lot of them were big plays. Lamar averaged 12.1 yards per attempt in this game, and part of that was 56-yard play to Nelson Aguilar, 30-yarder to Charlie Kohler, a 23-yard screen to Derrick Henry. But I liked how the Ravens got their guys out into space. Rashod Bateman with a great touchdown. He ran a beautiful, beautiful route on that touchdown, had the safety turning around and looking back for, where turning around. He's like, wait, get the guy, Matt, man. He was completely lost. But, the offense had Micah Parsons and that Dallas defense frustrated. And Micah Parsons, I I put some clips out there. Someone who put a cut up of Micah Parsons out there. And I put it out as well. And I said, the Dallas defense had Micah Parsons, dazed and confused all day or whatnot. And I had said it in the game, they had him in hell essentially. And Parsons, within like a minute or two, quote tweeted me. I'm sure I don't know what he was doing, maybe looking up his name. And, gave this whole lesson about him spilling down. And when the tight end goes across your face on those zone reads and whatnot, 10 minutes later, it was deleted. But look, there's the Ravens caused the Cowboys a lot of frustration in that game. Not all of it's on Micah Parsons. I don't think Parsons had a great game. I thought Baltimore did a good job of neutralizing him and making him not be a factor. But that's what they were supposed to do, right? They didn't do that against Max Crosby. They weren't able to neutralize the guy that you had to worry about the most. Against Dallas, they learned their lesson, and they did. And that was something I was really proud of them for doing. And they did it with CeeDee Lamb, too. CeeDee had a terrible game. Nate Wiggins, although it was more of a learning experience for Nate, had one of the plays of the game with that CeeDee forced fumble. Got to give Nate credit for that. The penalties have to improve. John Harbaugh, of course, echoed that sentiment as well, where they have 11 penalties in week 2, followed up with 13 penalties in week 3. You can't have that. That's back-to-back 100 penalty yard days for the Ravens. Have to be better. Can't beat yourself that way. Although, I will say, the referees on some of those plays, those penalties, the Adafe Owe roughing call was so soft, and Owe called out the refs for it. John Harbaugh said the explanation from Ronald Tolbert, the referee, was that apparently since the offensive lineman caught it, like they couldn't call it grounding, but the offensive lineman was an ineligible receiver, so there have been some discrepancies on what that rule actually is or not. So I guess it was a little puzzling, I'd say, the explanation John Harbaugh got. But again, you just have to clean up the penalties because not every one of those penalties was a bad call. Some of them certainly were, but not every one of those penalties was. It's just something you have to get better at. So we will see. I see Justin saying, wish the Ravens would have invested in offensive line depth. I mean, I hear you. I just don't know who it would be. I mean, I'm sure there's a player out there that's, let's say, better than Josh Jones, but then you got to get his feet on the offense. And if there's not a needle mover out there, not that Ngakoue is, but maybe they try to look towards the trade deadline, although I'd be pretty offensive line you build in the offseason and you just kind of have what you have. It's very hard to find an impact offensive lineman on the free agent market because everybody needs them. So I understand why they didn't do it there. Anthony saying if Lamar won the MVP and number one seed with rookie Marquise Brown, Andrews, Willie Snead, Seth Robinson can do it with this offense. Pass rush, run defense, solid. O-line seems to have gotten better. Yeah, and Anthony, it's just about stacking, right? Just about stacking those games. Again, out with the bad, keep the good. We saw them stack another great run defense performance, right? And I'll bring up the graphic that we talked about yesterday of this game. We talk about the game recap here. 6.1 yards per rush for the Ravens. Again, just dominant on the ground. They held Dallas at 3.2. They could get nothing going there. Again, I mentioned the 12.1 yards per pass. While Dallas ended up having a ton of passing yards, again, that came a lot in the fourth quarter when I thought the play calls weren't as good from Zach Orr. But hey, you know what? If we're going to call here, I'm going to put it this way. If we're going to call this Zach Orr's in terms of play calling his Mike McDonald Dolphins game, well, guess what? The Ravens were able to win this one, luckily. And you take that, learning experiences and a win. If it's learning experiences and a loss, I know it can be a lot more difficult to swallow that. But I thought that, the play calling from Zach Orr was not great down the stretch. Again, both offense and defense conservative. But if that was Zach Orr's Miami Dolphins game from Mike McDonald back in 2022, then okay, they did it in a win, and you can learn from that, and hopefully the rest is history. Coming up with the final part of the show, we'll be talking about the latest news of the day for the Baltimore Ravens, more on what John Harbaugh had to say about the game today, and a lot more. So stay tuned. I'm planning to get to on this live instant reaction edition of Locked on Ravens. First, this show is brought to you by FanDuel. And you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel here on Locked on Ravens. And NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bet. So we get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So for the Ravens and Cowboys game, if you picked the Ravens, congratulations. Maybe if you picked the over on Nelson Aguilar's receiving yards, you might have won a lot of money over there on FanDuel. So just visit FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. We are back, rounding out Locked on Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you. Just about 7 p.m. Eastern on Monday. Appreciate everybody for being here. Again, if you want 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage, be sure to subscribe here on YouTube. Follow along here in audio form. We have great communities that are building so quickly. In YouTube, we just hit 8,000 subscribers in the video form. So appreciate everybody who has been along for that ride. And next up for that is our 9,000 goal. And in the audio form, that continues to grow every single day. A great community, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your shows. On social media, you can follow me over on Twitter at ChaosStrecker34, Instagram as well. Trying to build that up as well, ChaosStrecker34. Be sure to follow me over there. And again, if you want that 5 days a week Ravens coverage, be sure to check it up here on Locked on Ravens. So Anthony's saying he sees the Ravens trading for a corner before the deadline. I could see it potentially. I think Baltimore right now at least is good on corner depth, but we do know the saying, and I know you're probably thinking the same thing, Anthony, where you start the year with 50 million healthy corners and they end the year with 2. It feels like, if that becomes an issue, the depth, they could maybe make a move there. Rick, Always appreciate you tuning in, man. Just watched the Ryan Rickens show. Couldn't tune in live. Busy day. Yeah, super busy day. I feel like for a lot of people, hope your day went well. Yeah, it's just interesting because this Ravens team, with the pass rush that they have, them bringing in Ngakoue, just to go back to that for a second, I don't know what his playing time looks like. Where's the role? Has to be, in my opinion, probably as a third down guy only, because you have so many other bodies you can put in there that fit the skill set of what you need. And if you're talking skill sets, well, we know that guys like Van Noy, Owe, Ajabo, Robinson, they can all play on early downs if you need them to. I'm not putting Ngakoue out there on early downs. I'm using him as a situational pass rusher, almost like Justin Houston, right? Ravens had Justin Houston doing some crazy things too in that Don Martindale defense, but again, it worked out better for Houston than it did for Ngakoue, but I'm kind of using him in a Justin Houston-esque type of role. Pure pass rusher, go out there, do your thing. That's how I view Yannick Ngakoue. And I see Jay responded to Anthony saying, corner or wide receiver, if they can land a true number one, that makes Zay Flowers better, help Lamar. So, Jay, you say wide receiver, if not wide receiver. The one wide receiver, and I'm honestly monitoring this, and again, I don't really think it's that realistic. I've been on the Courtland Sutton train for a while. I think he fits exactly what the Ravens need. His contract is not that big, and I think he could fit in right in this offense. Big body receiver, kind of the skill set the Ravens need. I don't know if Denver's going to be interested in moving off of him. They weren't this offseason. I don't know if something changes for them. But I know we got a little bit ways to go before the trade deadline actually pops up for us. So I guess we'll see how that all unfolds. James saying the offense should not slow down, run the score up until the defense starts to gel. And hey, we talked about this on today's episode. So if you want to go check out what we had to say about this in more detail, be sure to check out today's episode, because Lamar said this and we talked about that, where Lamar didn't want to put the foot up off the gas. He wanted to keep it going. And it seemed like the coaching staff just wanted to get conservative. And John Harbaugh even admitted that they probably did get too conservative there as well. Hey, Jerry seems to be a fan of it. The move will scare the opponents. Hey, man, I hope it does. I hope it does. And you know what? I didn't even think about this, Johnny. This is a great point. Let Chuck Smith see what he can do for Yannick. Hey, Yannick's been awesome in his own right throughout his career, but we know Chuck Smith works that magic. Chuck Smith absolutely does. He does. We know he's done it with Owe, done it with Matabike, done it with Ajabo. Now, Ngakoue is a veteran guy, so it's not like he needs to get coached up on how to play at the NFL level and, kind of hone his skill set. He knows what that is. He's a vet. But, hey, man, Chuck Smith is the truth. We know Chuck Smith is the truth. Yeah, I see Best. What's up, man? Moves make sense even without the penalties. The rush didn't show up during Dallas run when we needed it. And obviously, I'm sure you mean the fourth quarter there when Dak was just dicing up that Ravens defense. It was tough to watch. I mean, it felt like every drop back was going to be a completion, where early in the game, it felt like they could get nothing. The tune just changed in the fourth quarter. I don't know what it is. Dusty saying Ngakoue is cut from the same mold as Owe. Fast, strip sack, and pursuit guy. That makes him a good depth guy to keep the edge fresh and prevent fourth quarter collapses. Chuck Smith, again, point there as well, is great. And yeah, again, I'm not mad at this move whatsoever. It's a practice squad signing. You're not breaking the bank for him. It's a low risk, potentially very high reward move. If you're the Ravens, you want to be able to hit on as many of those as you can. And in order to do that, you got to take as many chances on that as you can. So we'll see what the role ends up being, how much they actually plan to use him on a game-by-game basis once he gets called up to the active roster. But I think, to me, he's a player that I'm fine with them taking a chance on him. I'm fine with them doing that. Ryan asking thoughts on the Ravens having dead last place in the passing defense, giving up 291.7 pass yards per game. 31st is the Rams with 248.7. I have to run the numbers, Ryan, just in terms of yards per attempt. That's how I judge pass defense personally. Just because, look, if you go up against a team that throws the ball 50 million times a game, they're going to have more passing yards than a team that throws the ball 3 times a game. But I don't completely disregard passing yards, and it's concerning. It is. I mean, I thought Marlon played well yesterday. Nate Wiggins, certainly welcome to the NFL type of game for him. They were going after Roquan a lot, it felt like. Roquan has not had a Roquan-esque start to the season, in my opinion. Certainly been a struggle for Roquan. Look, it's crazy because we're talking about this, and they essentially shut down CeeDee Lamb for the most part, right? It wasn't like CeeDee played poorly. He didn't have a good game. And the Ravens took him out, but we're still talking about, well, man, this Ravens defense, again, just got gashed by Dak Prescott late in that game. So Marcus Williams has had a slow start. Kyle Hamilton looked back yesterday, but first 2 weeks he was a little slow to get started as well. I hope we can see it against Josh Allen. If they can put up a good performance against Josh Allen in Sunday Night Football in Baltimore, that to me will be really, really good. John saying, I saw that the Ravens were rumored to be interested in Cameron Fleming, the tackle, but he just worked out for his old team, the Broncos. I did not know this, John. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. They could certainly use depth guys. I just don't expect those depth guys to be needle movers. Plus, they'd probably have to get rid of a guy like a Josh Jones, and we'll see. Yeah, I see, Dom. Congratulations. I appreciate that. I'm sure that's going back to my 8,000 on YouTube or whatever it might be. Whatever it is, I appreciate the congratulations. Ravens76, be more checking in. What's up? KO just got from Dallas to see our Ravens play. Gotta admit, so proud to see so many Ravens there. It was a Baltimore invasion in Dallas yesterday. Yeah, man. First of all, shout out to you for going there. Shout out to you for going to the game, being a part of the Ravens flock there. It looked like a Ravens invasion. Looked like there were a bunch of Ravens fans there representing Baltimore. The chants were loud. Apparently the O was loud for the national anthem. Like, that's what I love. This fan base travels really well. I think it's an underrated aspect where this fan base is really good at supporting their team wherever they are. Fans all around the world, man. So that's awesome. Laura, appreciate you tuning in. It's the live reaction show. We had to do it. Rick, thinking they just wanted to add some depth of the position. He was probably the only halfway decent guy available. Yeah, we can look this up. Rick, thank you for bringing it up. We can look this up quickly. Ngakoue was, I think, definitely the best pass rushing option available. Let's see. Free agent pass rushers. Because he was a guy that I had kind of mentioned, like, oh, they could bring him back. I know. So a lot of people were not interested in this. A lot of people didn't like this move. A lot of people didn't love the idea of bringing back Ngakoue. But other than that, if these guys have not been scooped up, I'm not sure. But it's guys like Shaq Lawson, Randy Gregory, Rasheem Green, who the Ravens had interest in at one point, Derrick Rivers, Shane Ray, Ravens legend, Shane Ray. So Ngakoue was pretty, by far and away, the best option that was on the board for the Ravens in terms of a pass rusher if they really felt like they needed to address that situation. So go after the best guy. Bring him in. And hopefully it'll be better than the first time around. Best in the North saying we should get Sam Darnold also. What a start for Sam Darnold, man. Crazy. And I have a bunch of Justin Jefferson stock in fantasy, so I am certainly living large there. Laura, appreciate the support. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button here on Locked On Ravens if you want that 5 days a week of daily Ravens coverage. Oh, Aaron Donald. Oh, you mean Aaron Donald? Bring Aaron Donald on a retirement? Hey, I'll take that over Sam Darnold if that's what you meant. I'll take that 100%. J-Rock saying, happened the O-line stepped up, but still concerning how hard-headed Harbaugh is. Need a coach who doesn't go soft and get a lead. And again, I think that's just everybody has to get on the same page there, right? Everybody has to get on the same page. Where Lamar wants to keep his foot on the gas, the Ravens wanted to get conservative. You could certainly tell Lamar was not happy with some of the play calls that were coming in and some of the ways the Ravens were trying to be conservative during the game. You kind of see it in his body language and the way he was reacting. He wanted to put the foot on the gas. He wanted to continue that. 28-6 in the fourth quarter. Look, this team was up 28-6 in the fourth quarter with 9 minutes to go. And then it was a 28-25 game to end it. Feels like no lead is safe with this Ravens team right now. They have to get on the same page of how they want to attack those fourth quarters, how they want to be able to utilize their skill sets most effectively when the fourth quarter comes. So that's the big part of it for this Ravens team. But Yannick Ngakoue officially back as a member of the Baltimore Ravens on the practice squad. We will see how the Ravens intend to use him. That's all I have for you here today on this live edition of Locked On Ravens. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Hit that like and subscribe button on the way out on YouTube and on the way out in audio form. Be sure to subscribe and follow along. 5 days per week of Ravens coverage, plus instant reaction, live game episodes, big news instant reactions like this one. And of course, be sure to check out the content we already have out, like the instant reaction stream from Ravens Cowboys Week 3. We talked about Lamar sending a strong message to John Harbaugh and calling out Marlon Humphrey on today's 6 a.m. episode. And of course, we'll be back here tomorrow with Qadry Ismail, former Baltimore Ravens wide receiver, Super Bowl champion, talking about Lamar Jackson continuing his roasting tour and some other stuff about the Ravens and the explanation they got for some of these bad calls that were going against them. So appreciate everybody for tuning in. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.